Welcome to the East Bay's best podcast, The Capstone Conversation. This is a show that interviews political, government, and community leaders. We look at what is going on in your city, how are we developing things economically, and where are we going from here? Now I'm your host, Jared Ash. Welcome to today's episode of The Capstone Conversation. We're out in East Contra Costa County with the city of Oakley and council member and former mayor, Aaron Meadows. Aaron, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Oakley?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, Jared. I was elected in 20, so served for 3 years now. I just completed my year as mayor. We just had a rotation last Tuesday, and now we have Mayor Nissa Williams. Well, I've been a lifelong Oakley resident. Family's been here since the 1800s, so really this is my city. And my business is here. Family's had business here since the 50s. Just really love Oakley. And I was involved when I was in my 20s, got married, had kids, and then put on hold any of my civic activities until my kids were older. And the opportunity presented itself in 20 to run, and I did. And I'm glad I did.
That's great. I know that feeling. I have 3 little daughters, and every time I'm away at a work event or a community meeting, I would sit on the county transportation authority citizens advisory committee. I'm always like, how long is this meeting? Can you help me with bedtime? And so I certainly understand the commitment to public service and appreciate everything everybody does in our communities. You talked about being a lifelong resident of Oakley, being involved for a long time, but Oakley is one of the newest cities in Contra Costa County in the Bay Area. Talk about some of the challenges that has had and how the city has risen to those.
So we are the newest city in Contra Costa County. In 2024, we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary. So it's the newest city, but they're still 25 years old. Challenges would be when we split off from the county, the property tax split that we received was very low. So we don't have the same kind of financial resources as some of the other communities, or as all the other communities in Contra Costa County. So we have to do what we do on a limited budget. So it hinders what some of the services we can provide to our citizens. But there's also positives too. We can't just spend money without a lot of thought. Historically, Oakley's been fiscally conservative.
That makes sense. And that's come up, I think, in Hercules too, where they have a limited tax base compared to other cities, and it creates a tighter investment budget into their future versus services today, kind of as they compared it, I think.
Our sales tax, I think, is second lowest in the county, just above Clayton. So.
And how is the city growing? You've got a lot of open land. The arena numbers come up for everybody, but you guys are 45,000 roughly in population in the 2020s. What do you see growth being? Is Oakley going to be eventually 100,000 city? Are you going to have high-rise apartments? What are we looking at? What do you see Oakley becoming 10, 20 years down the road?
So Oakley is currently about 45,000 residents. We have about 5,000 housing units approved for construction. The majority of those are down the Cypress corridor. In today's world, I don't see high rises in Oakley's future. If you're talking, 10 plus story buildings, I do see, potentially some additional 4-story buildings. But it also depends on state law and the state cramming down development on us that our citizens might not necessarily want. So we'll see what the future brings there. But if it's up to Oakley, we'll probably think our general plan has us about 65,000 people. So I'd say somewhere between 65 and 70,000 build out, which is still a ways out.
That's that's a lot of growth. I mean, you're talking 40 to 50% increase in population to manage.
It is 50% right there, but that's a build out, and 5,000 units that we have in the pipeline that have been approved. And the way interest rates are right now, I don't see those. I mean, like DeNova's under construction on a project, the east end of Cypress. I believe they will start building homes in the spring, but right now, as long as the interest rates stay up, I don't see a lot of sales. They'll have sales, but it'll be a little slower pace than if interest rates were still in the threes or fours.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? With just the housing market overall. But that's interesting when we talk about the lack of housing and supply, that you have 5,000 already approved and are waiting to sort of go through the process of being built. Most of the time, we're talking about cities that can't get housing approved because of objections and everything. So you guys are looking at that.
You mentioned arena numbers. Arena numbers actually went down in this cycle a little bit. And that's because we didn't hit 100% of our target in the last cycle, but we did a better job than most cities in Contra Costa County. And so for the current cycle we're in, our numbers did go down slightly. We are supposed to be building 1,058 units in the 8-year cycle.
You guys are well ahead of that. And I bet you there's others in Central County or in Alameda that would wish you would just absorb their numbers for them.
So I believe you're right.
Out of that 5,000 approved, how many of that is single family versus townhomes and apartments?
It's all single family.
Really just talks about the type of different community that it's developing versus a Pleasant Hill, which is trying to build townhomes and apartments and condos to absorb it because they don't have the space that Oakley has.
We're 25 plus years behind Pleasant Hill.
That makes sense as we continue moving east. So talk about the infrastructure needed for that development. We mentioned Cypress Road as a big concern. How are you building out the infrastructure? How are you partnering with developers, and where are you still short?
I mentioned I was elected 3 years ago. First call I took, and we have gone now to district elections. When I was elected in 20, it was citywide. The first call I took, probably in December, right after getting sworn in, was from somebody I knew on the east end of Oakley on Summer Lakes. And it had to do with Cypress Road being 2 lanes up towards Buckle Island. And at that time, there'd been a couple fires out there, grass fires, and Cypress Road was closed down. So there was concerns about emergency evacuation, and same thing if there's any wrecks on Cypress, it closes the road down. And so how do people get out of east end of Cypress, out of Buckle Island? So for 3 years, we've been working on addressing it. We approved a contract to depending on the area, 4 to 6 lanes from Knightson Avenue to just west of the Contra Costa Canal, which should start early 2024. We've been working with the developer, TI Capital, that owns the north and south sides of Cypress Road between the canal and Buckle Island Road. We have agreed to build the road. The city has agreed to build the road. They're giving us the right of way, the plans. And so our time frame is to have that road completed all the way to Buckle Island Road within 3 years. But on the first segment that we're working on, we keep getting roadblocks from the feds. We need a permit from the feds, and they've been dragging their feet. But we're doing what we can to push that process along. That is the top priority for our city council. And I think I can't speak for every council member, but if you were to ask them, I believe they would agree that's the top priority.
And what's the issue with the feds?
Bureau of Reclamation needs to sign off on permit.
Oh, yeah. And they run 2 to 3 years. Is the congressman helping you guys out? Is he aware of it?
Congressman DeSalle is aware of it, and we've met, and he's doing what he can. He is not a hindrance at all. He's helping. The Bureau drags their feet, and then we expected last Friday to sign, and it went back to the attorneys, the Bureau's attorney. So we'll see what happens.
All right. And similarly, I was talking to the mayor of Rio Vista recently, which is at a far corner of Solano. But I just learned that there's like the shortcut through 12 and 160 that dumps into Oakley as a place where people can work and travel. But their concern in Rio Vista is the same. They have Highway 12, which is, I think they consider a 1-lane road, which in each direction, which is, I think, related to Blood Highway 12. They call it at Caltrans. They know it's a problem. There's also concerns with Rio Vista with fires, because if they get out and their bridge is up at the time where they need to get out, they have no control locally over a drawbridge, and they're trapped. And they want to get to, and that's the case. They want to get to Oakley and get out through that 1-lane road. So interesting how, right, if you look at the map, Bethel Island and where they come in from Rio Vista, how that's just infrastructure that Caltrans has never developed, mostly because you haven't had population out there for a long time. Now population change, Caltrans might need to take a look.
So in our case, it's us, not Caltrans, having to do it. I mean, historically, the land was under county control, and technically, every home that has been built east of Knightson Avenue to date was approved by Contra Costa County. Some of those were built in what's now Oakley, but Delta Coves on Bethel Island is adding homes. So they're adding to the problem also, but not helping with the road. The road falls back onto the city.
Do you think, is there other areas around Oakley that have, in the unincorporated county, that eventually might incorporate into Oakley? Or are you guys now all have taken, when you formed 25 years ago, did it include all of that?
So when it formed 25 years ago, it did not include everything within our current boundaries. There was land added to the east down Cypress corridor. I believe in 2006, it was annexed in. So we have grown to the east a little bit. Do I see us annexing anything in the future? I won't say no, but it won't be anything major.
If you're tired of just listening to my voice and you want to see us in video, the Capstone Conversation has its own channel out there on YouTube. It is the exact same as the podcast episode, but for those of you who would like to see our guests, watch it on your tablet while you're doing the dishes or whenever works for you. Thanks for joining us, and hit subscribe, whether you're at your podcast app or on YouTube. Let's talk about everybody's familiar that you guys have that huge Amazon logistics center out there. Talk a little bit about how that has impacted the town from an economic development standpoint, from a workforce standpoint. What has sort of been the impacts since that's been built?
I don't have numbers. I don't have the data on it, but
that's okay.
I mean, if you look at our property taxes in Oakley, I believe 2 years ago, I believe the last 2 years we were number one at property tax increase. 2 years ago, it was like 16+%, almost 17% increase in property taxes. And homes were selling. The values on the residential properties were going up. But it's also when the Contra Costa Logistics Center was coming online and some of the buildings were being final. So I believe it's added substantially to our property tax revenue. And then the assessments that we place on there, like for police purposes. I don't have the number of jobs in there. It was talked about it being 2,000 plus at build out. It's built out at this point. I know the last week or so I've driven by there, and there's more, obviously because of Christmas, but there's been a lot of traffic, a lot of trucks coming in and out of there. So it's definitely active. And I was telling you offline, but on last Tuesday, we received an application to build to the east and to the south of the current logistics center, uh, similar space. It'd be 3.2 million additional square foot that was in the application, almost 2 times the size of the current project.
And is that for Amazon, or who would take over that facility?
There's no users lined up yet.
Okay.
Uh,
It's
the-
just the developer building it, believing that they could attract somebody to that location.
Correct. My understanding, I believe they're looking at a 5 to 10 year time period to get it done. And the developer is an experienced developer around the country. Used to work for a big warehouse developer, and I don't know how they necessarily structured it, but looks like probably be a joint venture with the property owner.
So you're talking there again, another 2,000 to, let's say, 3 or 4,000 jobs, depending on the size, depending on the actual plans. What kind of impact would that have on Oakley, on the population, on the housing out there?
I figure it'd be upwards of 4,000 jobs in the new facility. It's 4,000 jobs that we don't have currently in Oakley, or East County. So it's a positive impact for our workforce in all of East Contra Costa County. And I know you've interviewed Mayor Joel Bryant earlier today. We all really need to work together. And if you look at East Contra Costa County as a region, we're only maybe 350,000 people between Discovery Bay and Bay Point, which would be a good sized city, but we wouldn't be bigger than Oakland or Stockton or Sacramento. So some of the issues out here, we need to work together. And the one I would push for, and I think the board supervisors have with the northern waterfront, but is economic development in East Contra Costa County. Because the jobs that will be added at the logistics center benefit Antioch and Brentwood and Pittsburgh. And so not just Oakland.
Well, and that came up with a previous interview I did with the Bay Area Council's Jim Wonderman, and his advice to a lot of the people, particularly in Contra Costa County and Solano County, is stop competing over each other for jobs, right? If a life science company or hub develops at the Concord Naval Weapons Station, that will benefit everybody. Pool resources, pool your branding to do that. It doesn't have to be in Martinez to create the win. That helps everybody's housing. And he used an example of the Tri Valley and Innovate Tri Valley. They came together at a Livermore Labs and really got the business and nonprofit community together. And it was sort of interesting saying, like, we don't do that very well out here in Contra Costa, or for those people in Solano, as a problem. So talking about that, how do the cities out in East County form a better partnership to attract businesses?
Pre-COVID, the 4 cities in the county were meeting. We had not had any meetings in the 3 years I'd been on council until last month. We came together, the 4 cities and the 2 supervisors came together to start meeting again. And we will be doing that 4 times a year now. So we'll go back to that. In the meeting, we talked about different topics that we wanted to talk about, work on regionally. I brought up economic development. There were other issues brought up. My comments were that same thing. I pointed out the size of the region and that we really need to be working together, because if Oakley gets the additional space at the logistics center, it benefits everybody else. Brentwood's got some attributes that can help bring in employers. They've got the area south of Home Depot and the area around there. Antioch and Pittsburgh have waterfront and rail access. And so we all have something we can bring to the table. Byron Airport. So instead of everybody, all 4 cities trying to compete for a Google, we work together, because if Google can land in Brentwood, it helps our residents. And, if we have the distribution center Oakley, that helps everybody else's too. So
Yeah, that's great. What else came out of that meeting? What were other priorities that were talked about other than economic development?
I think we talked about infrastructure a little bit. Homeless issue was brought up.
What's the homeless situation out in East County? And it probably varies because I would say Pittsburgh, Bay Point, Antioch might have different concerns than Oakley and Brentwood, which are more single family, more spread out, but it spills over.
Yeah. At the point in time count last, I guess January, February, I mean, we had 9 homeless that were counted in Oakley. We were down. I think Brentwood was down. Antioch obviously has a homeless issue, and I'm not sure on Pittsburgh's numbers. I mean, it's something that can be worked on, but to me, it's a county and state issue, and it's definitely not an Oakley issue. Like we started off with this podcast. I mean, we don't have the resources.
Yeah. It in a lot of cities and even counties feel that way, that it's got to be led from innovation and a top down. And that goes back to the economic development. Things just don't stop at the end of a city border and streets. I often talk about routes in transportation, routes of regional significance. You know, if your town flows their streetlights together and the traffic moves, but it's backed up 3 towns earlier, like on Kirker Pass Road to Ignacio, because not everybody's lights sync up, that's everybody's problem. And this concept of everybody meeting sometimes is surprising. Like, why would I meet with somebody from another city? So I give you credit for getting that meeting going and participating, and I hope others do as well as they continue every quarter. What are other issues out in Oakley? What are some of the highlights that you guys have going on out there?
One thing I want to point out is our police department right now is fully staffed. Uh, we're in the process. I think we just lost one officer to moving closer to his home, and at the same time, he was leaving. We had somebody in the pipeline to come in, and I believe he started yesterday. So we're still fully staffed. Our council authorized overhiring by 2 in this fiscal budget, and in January we add another authorized officer. So law enforcement's important to us, and so we're putting the resources there that we think we need to, and we'll continue to.
I think that's great. When you talk to a lot of the cities around the area, they are short staffed in their police departments. They have vacancies that they can't fill, including one of your neighboring cities there in Antioch. They have leadership concerns. And so that's great that you are attracting the officers and you figured that out. And I believe your city manager said you guys are fully staffed too in terms of city personnel, which shows that you guys have good leadership there.
I know in June we were fully staffed. It varies though. We've had, some people leave. We have about 100, 105 full-time employees, something like that. I think 100 full-time employees. So, there's always going to be turnover,
Right.
but when you do hit 100%, pretty good. We do have, I believe, good leadership in Oakley. Our council works pretty good together. So, I think we have a good council. I think our city manager does a good job as city manager. He's young, never been a city manager, assistant city manager anywhere. He'd worked for Oakley for about 13, 14 years before he was placed as interim city manager and then eventually hired at the director level. We have great staff from top to bottom. Everybody in this organization, I think wants to be here, does a good job, is I think happy to be there and work well together. So we're very fortunate there. And then, going back to the police department, it was myself and the city manager sitting in a meeting with somebody that was buying a facility in Oakley, looking to invest and looking to possibly do manufacturing and retail sales here in East County. And they looked at one of those neighbors And one of the questions they'd asked was about the police department. When they were sitting in the meeting with us, they asked us, you know, is law enforcement a priority? And, I gave them the same answer. It's a priority. And at that point we were fully staffed. So it can help us on the economic development front, because I think the businesses coming here want to come to a city that supports their law enforcement. What a safe city. And it's typically ranked one of the safer cities in California in whatever surveys done typically every spring.
Well, that's important, especially as you're looking to build out that many residents for people to know that it is safe, right? The opposite of Oakland in a lot of ways, not just for safety, but in so many other ways too. But yeah, I think it's interesting. You talk about it's a small city in terms of staff, a smaller budget than a lot of cities. The way you talk about the property tax sharing revenue, but you're at 100% capacity. So cities that might have more staff, that I think the largest city in the county might have 3 times more staff than you, but I think their planning department has 12 or 15 openings right now. And so their process to get approval actually would take longer due to those vacancies than their capacity. So you're creating a good culture, a good place to live. It sounds like out there to work, live, and find that balance in an affordable community compared to a lot of the other areas of the Bay.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. And I know some have said it's not affordable out in Oakland anymore. And in comparison to 20 years ago, and that would be a true statement, but in comparison to the greater Bay Area, we're still affordable. Us in, Solano County. And so that's why people look at those areas to move to or further east.
Right. Anything else we should know about you or Oakley before we head out?
I think we covered majority of what's going on. It's just a great city to be in, and I'm fortunate to be able to have served the last 3 years, and I'm fortunate to serve in the city that, I've spent my life in. So, and I thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and thank you for the service to your city in East Bay. And I appreciate your friendship. Happy New Year to you, because we're recording it right before the holidays. Thank you, Councilman, former Mayor Harry Meadows from Oakley. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jared.
Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Ash, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.